I've been getting a lot of comments from people telling me that I've been dragging them into the Anbennar rabbit hole recently, which I love to read because I love seeing people enjoy this mod as much as I do. But if you're not one of those people, don't worry, because I'm still going to give you a rundown of what you're looking at. Assuming, of course, you are familiar with Europa Universalis 4 and you're familiar with what mods are, this will be a little bit easier. Anbennar is a fantasy total conversion mod for EU4, changing absolutely everything you know about the game. To be more specific, the type of fantasy we're dealing with is what you might call high fantasy. The classic, somewhat Tolkien in a sense form of fantasy, but also most of its inspiration comes directly from Dungeons and Dragons, but not completely. So you're gonna have your centaurs, your humans, your elves, your orcs, your goblins, so on and so forth. There are a lot of fantasy races in Anbennar, and my goal is to make a video for all of them, which is going to be tough considering that they have not finished actually making the entire map. I've covered goblins, I've covered dwarves, and I've covered ogres, and technically kobolds, but that was a while ago. Today, as the thumbnail and title probably suggest, we're going to be covering orcs. So while orcs originated in the Serpent Spine, they have since left the Serpent Spine in a recent event known as the Green Tide. Now there is a lot of lore in Anbennar. Each region would warrant a university lecture on their own, but not everything is relevant to every region, of course, so I'm gonna give you a bit of a rundown for what's going on in the Deepwoods. If you want, you can pause, go ahead and read this enormous blurb of text, but I'll give you a sort of TLDR on the situation we're in. The Deepwoods are a pretty magical place, the way that they're connected to these beings called Fae. They're kind of magical creatures, so they reside over this whole thing called the Deepwoods. Is that they had this thing called the Verdant Veil, which was like a powerful ward that kept people from like leaving the Deepwoods. I'm pretty sure it was kind of like a you can get in but you can't get out kind of thing. Now, I talked earlier about an event called the Green Tide. That's why we're in a thing called the Age of Green Tide. TLDR for that one, a giant mountain range called the Serpent Spine. Orcs exist in there. Orcs decided we're leaving the Serpent Spine. We're going to invade up here. Some of the orcs went a little further than just going up here. Some of them decided, how about we invade the Deepwoods? After a while, the orcs realized, oh, we can't leave this place. That kind of sucks. And then the Green Tide itself started to subside because of the avatar of a fallen god who took the form of a girl by the name of Corin, and she fought against the Green Tide, eventually slaying this really important guy whose name is Dukan's son. That has a lot to do with our religion that I'll talk about in a minute. But as part of that process, literally a year ago in game time, Corin and I assume her party went in and killed a very important Fae, the Fae that was responsible for holding up the Verdant Veil. So, as of literally a year ago, people are now allowed to leave the Deepwoods. That has some pretty big implications for the future of the Deepwoods. We are the Sapchopper clan, one of the clans that broke off from the general large orc horde that invaded the Deepwoods. So that brings us to this event. Originally just another raider among the Green Tide hordes, he had earned recognition to become the first chieftain of the Sapchopper clan by cutting down the leaders of an elven host. At this point, it would be safe to assume that the orcs are not really aware at this point that they can leave the Deepwoods now. Right off the bat, that's going to give us minus 15% tax, production efficiency, and manpower until we eventually figure out how to deal with that. That's also a nice enough segue into the unique things we have as orcs. I believe humans are used as the baseline. I don't think you have anything unique as a human, so this is all comparative kind of stats. So our administration gives us a couple of bonuses and a few malices, the most important of which would be that we have very cheap military advisors, half-cost war taxes, but as a penalty, it is harder to develop by 10%, and all technology is more expensive. We deal more damage and receive less damage, as well as increase our manpower recovery speed. But as a penalty, we don't deal as much land fire damage, which is more in the late game, and we're just generally worse at defending and sieging forts. I think that's pretty much everything you need to know about our starting situation, and I'm gonna take a moment to say, hey, if you enjoy Anbennar or EU4 or other Paradox games, as I've been, making a few other videos here and there, then maybe it would be a good idea to subscribe. I would very much appreciate it, but that being said, let's get on on to our actual video. So we do have a whole mission tree to get through, a mission tree which I'm going to assume expands. To get started, it's mostly just a lot of war and for some reason insulting people. Before we start making enemies, it might be a good idea to start making a couple of friends. So we'll ally up with at least one other clan, maybe even two, because I know for sure these elves have a system of alliances themselves. Another mission wants us to grant specific privileges to our estates, so we might as well go ahead and do that. It's gonna give us 15% land force limit modifier and some cheaper infantry for the next 10 years. The lore behind it is basically that we're going to need to make concessions to maintain the loyalty of our clan, because they don't exactly have a reason to really care about this new clan. I'm not gonna stop there though, I'm also going to give them land rights to make them a little bit happier. I'll also go ahead and seize land to get some of that crown land back, but I'm gonna have to spend some more on making the mages happy. Because of course there are mages, that's a D&D inspired mod, which also implies of course that we can cast spells with these mages. We also need to select our rivals, and I think that's gonna be Bramble Skinner. So orcs actually kind of enslaved goblins, fun fact. Bramble Skinner may very well be a result of a goblin slave revolt, and as such they're not exactly friends with any of the orcs. The other two rivals are simply some that we're going to have to invade pretty soon. I completely forgot to mention our religion actually, so I'm glad that the game decided to give me this pop-up. So yes, our religion is interesting because it is technically like a new version of an older religion. As the description suggests, Great Dukan is a more zealous offshoot of the old Dukan religion. Dukan is said to be the creator of the orcish race, and they believe a guy by the name of Korgus Dukanson is the champion of that god. Remember I mentioned the Green Tide? That's important because that was led by Dukanson. But as the event suggests, Dukanson is now dead. So should we continue to believe in the Dukanson religion, Great Dukan, or should we go back to the original old Dukan? I did a little bit of digging around and found that most people would recommend if we change our religion to old Dukan, mostly because of what that text at the bottom implies. Fortunately, most of our provinces are actually old Dukan, so we only need to convert one of them. Next, we need to cast our Vicious Mockery to these two enemies. It's going to give us 10% aggressive expansion for the next 10 years, but 10% cheaper provinces. And now that we have our army, we also need to hire a military advisor, but we don't have a lot of money, so I'm going to sell some titles. This will allow us to finish off this mission. Now we get to the fun part where we actually get to invade somebody. I mentioned earlier, this is probably going to be one of our first enemies, mostly because we have a mission for them, but also because the elves are all allied to one another. So let's begin. Fortunately, the goblins are not terribly strong, and we have an interesting terrain effect on these bladeways. Instead of being a local defender dice roll bonus, it's actually local attacker. The only time I've seen this be used ever, maybe. But that's just how it is. With Fey magic, things are just kind of weird sometimes. Fortunately, the goblins are not very strong, so it was pretty easy to wipe both of them. Warfare is a little bit weird in the Deepwoods because you can travel between any of these gladeways. So military access is a funky little thing. We can just go from here straight over to here and then move into here because we don't have access through these elves. Spent a little more time sieging so I could also extract a bit of prestige out of these guys here. Having completely defeated the goblin tribe of Bramble Skinner, we now get claims on a lot of territory, all of the stuff they own. That's gonna make it cheaper to core. By building a spy network in our two rivals here, we've learned about how the elves have been able to raid us so efficiently. So we get 50% looting speed and 20% more available loot for the next 10 years, and an event happens. So the way that this event ends up working out is not as I would have expected. Turns out, of course, we're all going to war. Let's go fight some elves or something. That war is declared against me by Salakenag. I assume that's pronounced. So this is gonna be interesting. I'm going to allow the event to expire to give ourselves at least a few months of morale recovery. And of course, simultaneously, rebels pop up and the war is declared. Very nice. But this, I think we might be able to handle. Fortunately, remember, we have our allies, so we're not alone in this. So while the elves continue to hire more and more condottieri, it's not going to be enough. There is, however, one person we need to fear, and that is this army that has a 2-8-1-4 general, a war wizard, allowing them to have higher stats than most generals. It makes them kind of a pain to fight, but if I can divide them like this, we should be able to deal with these guys in the north. And with enough troops and allies, this should be no problem. Annexing both countries this way instead of separately will be less aggressive expansion, and it's probably a good idea just this early on in the game. It'll also give us enough prestige to finish off this mission over here. In short, we have become a lot more powerful, and thus the chieftain has become a lot more important, and as a result we gain some support for feudalism in the capital. We've also finished off this mission, the lore for which is more of like a preamble to what we just did. In this event, our ruler is enjoying the spoils of victory when suddenly he has a vision. I think we can assume that this has to do with the Fae, and so being offered a goblet with golden liquid in it, our ruler has a choice to either drink or throw the goblet away. The top option will remove our military penalty, which is currently minus 15% national manpower, and it will replace it with Ashen Guidance military, which still removes some of the national manpower but not as much, and gives us 5% infantry combat ability for the rest of the game. Or we could decide to toss it away. We remove our permanent modifier and replace it with a 10-year one. Now, I think I know where this is going to go, but I think it would be interesting, so why not? We'll take the top option. Now that we've finished coring these formerly goblin territories in the west, we must remind the goblins of their place in orc society. To do that, we must, quote, grind each and every goblin into submission. And through this event, we get our pick of what to do with some of them. Either we get Monstrous Tribes loyalty, we can get construction cost, let's be honest, we're not building anything in the next 10 years, or we can get infantry cost minus 10%, which I kinda like. We're going to need it to raise more men for the upcoming wars because we are going to have to fight the remaining Elven Alliance. We have our first reform, and in fact I forgot to mention that we have our own unique Tier 1 government reform. We are a Deepwood horde, giving us a lot more manpower, a lot more force limit, a few other army related things, but also reduced diplomatic relations, reduced institution spread, and half reform progress growth. To make up for some of that lost reform progress growth, I think we're actually going to take this reform. Every time we win a war against a non-monstrous nation, we're going to get 20 government reform progress. Which means we only really need to win 3 wars against the elves that remain here before we'll make back the cost of this and then some. I also wanted to take this opportunity to consolidate some of our territories and reduce some of the overextension because that's causing our diplo rep to go down, which means we cannot call in our allies. Another thing we kind of have to do is probably get the rest of feudalism in here because like it's really not going to go anywhere. So to do that, we're going to try, and it's going to be really painful, but we're going to have to develop this using mostly diplo and mill power. I'm also going to sell some titles, take some crown land back. I think we've waited long enough. Let's pry this confederation apart. Starting with this battle, and an easy stack wipe. I'll force each one to give me war reps and break all of their alliances, plus I'll just take their money. Unfortunately, each individual piece does not give us 20 reform progress, it has to be each individual war. I also haven't played with this religion, I don't think, so I kinda just wanna test a few things out. So let's see what this does. Interesting. So 5 years of increased development cost, kind of inconvenient for what I'm trying to do, but okay. 20% shock damage is massive though. So that's kind of nice during wars, I guess. And so that'll finish the war. There we go, we get our reform progress, we can core up some of these provinces, and we can finish this mission. Now that we've taken this area, we found one of the elven capitals. Look at that, 14 development and produces silk. Fancy. Time to burn it down. This city used to be the heart of Wood Elf society, but not anymore. Now it's nothing but ashes, and the Verdant Pact is completely annihilated. We knew that though, because we actually destroyed it ourselves. So the city gains 25 devastation, we get 10 power projection, and 150 crowns. Now I am going to go a little bit off script here, because I'm not, technically supposed to invade these guys yet, but I don't think it matters because we don't really have anything in our mission tree which is specific for them. But it's also a pretty convenient opportunity to attack them because their ally is not going to help them. They do have a powerful mage though, that's what this icon is. Their leader's a powerful mage, so they have a default war wizard somewhere. Yeah, there they are, okay. Your war wizard is still no match. Capital fell relatively quickly, so we can grab everything that they have. Oh right, we do have a little bit of feudalism now technically, don't we? Because we do have some territory that's outside of the region now. Oh, I feel kind of stupid now. I was very much not supposed to develop the capital. Oops. Well, it's not like it did that much damage, it was just kind of expensive. Conveniently for us, our ally who was defending Blightseed over here no longer wants to help them, and I do need to invade them, so I might as well get started. Ooh, now this is an interesting one. So there's an Archfey of the Seelie Court, one of the, I think, 2 courts that exist, the Seelie and the Unseelie or something. This Archfey takes the form of an old wolf and is all about like hunting and stuff like that. So apparently this Lord of Beasts has left a sign of his presence as an open invitation to our leader. Is it a good idea? I don't know, but we're going to find out. I'm guessing it's probably going to be a large list of chances to die, and I'm pretty sure we really do not want our guy to die, so we're gonna try and, you know, not gamble too much. We survived the first time. Next, we're going to have to face the Lord of Beasts. Oh boy. I'm not liking these options, but let's see what happens. We approach silently and try to get this over with. Unfortunately, it did not quite work out the way that we wanted it to. We did land a hit, but we're not quite done. After a very intense fight, we have 3 options. 1, silence, 2, escape, and 3, escape injury. We won the fight. There you go. At last, the battle is over, and we've beaten the Lord of Beasts. Having won, we are given the opportunity to pick our reward from the Archfey. We have numerous options between each of these, but I think the most impactful one is going to be the monthly Diplo power. With that last siege, we've won the war, and I'm gonna take... Hey, that's a lot more stuff you own than I thought you did. Well, I don't just want to give that way to my ally, because they're not going to be my ally for very long. We are going to have to take this one province. I will take this stuff over here, though, and then we'll come back in however many years. With that done, we can increase our rank to a kingdom, and we can finish off this mission over here. Having won more than 5 wars, and taken more than 40 provinces, we've claimed our place as the undisputed power of these woods. That's going to give us 20 years of reduced national unrest, yearly prestige, and monthly autonomy change. Plus, that other 50 support for feudalism, which is why I didn't actually have to develop anything. But it is what it is. Let's embrace feudalism, and let's tech up. Oh, what do you know? I guess the bar for great power is pretty low. I spent some time cleaning up some rebels, making sure everything gets cored, and building up a bit of admin. Because, you know, we do eventually need to attack our ally here, but I'm not going to do it directly, of course. I'm going to attack their ally, which will call them in. I'll probably take this one province and then force them to, I don't know, sit back for another 5 years. They both have quite a bit of manpower because they haven't been expanding the same way I've been expanding, but their techs are only still on 3 and I have tech 4. Still a very weird dynamic, deciding actually, maybe I don't want to defend something. Maybe I want to wait for somebody to move into that tile and then attack them. I always discounted the Deepwoods because I never felt like they had that much going on, and to be fair, a lot of the stuff in here is like pretty old, but it does have some pretty unique mechanics and I can appreciate that. Like, for example, this starting node kind of seems like it sucks, and like, yeah, it does. The start of the game, it definitely is terrible. But I've seen AI Siren Var, which is like the elf formable for this region. I've seen them easily become like the 2nd or 3rd highest income in the game, despite this node being a starting node. That's because it's also technically not a starting node, even though it is, but it's complicated. I've been caught in a bit of a loop in this war where I put 4,000 people on this province, and then I go and I deal with one army, and then a second army comes by and wipes it, and then I deal with that army, and then I go and I put another 4K on here, and I go deal with some armies, and then an army comes by and wipes that one. And so as a consequence, over 100,000 people have died in this war, but this side's, they've lost all their manpower. Surely they can't keep doing this forever. Part of my new strategy is just gonna be, I guess, letting them siege my stuff while I siege their stuff. That seems to work out. Yeah, that took kind of a long time. Still not looking for the world's longest truce with this guy. I really just want the one province. Gonna break that alliance, war reps, money. I'm good. We've also finished a mission because of course we did just need that one province. So that'll give us a stability, we'll get some claims, and we'll get a mission. Before we pick that up though, I think I'm gonna want to boost stability once myself, even if it's rather expensive, just so I can get stabbed too. I'm actually gonna leave him with this much land. land. This is a glade way, so we can teleport to it. It's not a big deal. I will take that fort because it was a pain. We can come back in 15 years to clean them up. I don't really think I have any missions for them in particular. And you know what? I've changed my mind. I'm just gonna take the stability. It's fine. If you remember the guys that were here previously, the Light Seeds, they actually supplanted a different clan called Bloody Tusk, and so we are presented with an opportunity. The idea is we would give them a little bit more autonomy, and in exchange they would give us a lot more warriors. And in practice, this is pretty much what you'd expect. In exchange for 15 minimum local autonomy in these provinces up in this area, we get 20% local manpower and cheaper development costs. On the contrary, we could just get 5% land back, but I think it's fine. We'll go ahead and take it. We've also finished another mission, the Hunters Hunted. This was for taking every province in the Hunter's Grove, which is this area over here. It was previously home to those elves, if you remember. Apparently some elves that were pretty good at cavalry, using stags as their steeds. So that'll give us 15% cavalry combat ability for 20 years. This mission talks about a particular orc in the Blightseed clan, the one that supplanted the Bloody Tusk clan. Supposedly this guy was just really good at magic, I guess. We're gonna study that magic, make it part of our own country, and to do that we're gonna build a mage tower in the capital. Supposedly this is gonna take us 350 ducats, because that's something we need to do this mission. And also maybe manpower, I don't know. Or maybe it will be free. Huh, okay. Anyway, now that it is a little bit cheaper for us to develop, and we do have something we need to develop, that being this province over here, we might as well get started. If you remember a little bit ago, we burned this city down to the ground, pretty much. Turns out the area has something even more important than just loot. It has fertile land and relative normalcy compared to the rest of the Deepwoods. So by improving it, we've turned it into a city for orcs. That'll allow us to rename it completely, and also it'll give us easier conversion and easier culture conversion in a couple of these provinces. Now that's relevant because we actually do need to culture convert this, and to do that, first we're going to need to actually convert it. But also the separatism has another like 10 years to go on it, so not like we can exactly culture convert it yet. There would be another option though, and that would be if we wanted to expel all of the elves from the Deepwoods. But that would be a pretty mean thing to do. I don't know why we would do that at all. Okay, now we get to the fun part. So it seems I'm not just the first one to get this event here, but if you remember at the start it said, hey, do you want to remain new Dukan or old Dukan? What do you want to do? And we stuck with old Dukan, which has led to this new event, prompting us to decide whether we should remain Dukan followers or swap to this new religion. I don't think I've taken a look at this religion. Maybe it's new, maybe it isn't, but at the very least I'll take a look. So Bulgu Orazan, the philosophy that rejects worshipping Dukan and instead focuses on the lessons that can be learned from orcish history. So in terms of mechanics, it is a heretical belief to Great Dukan and Old Dukan. We can't do anything with our current religious power, but we did just get another event, which has given us a song. Okay, so once we get to 100 religious power, we can select a song. Oh, isn't that ironic? Now we get the song of Korgus Dukan's son. You know, the guy. Fair enough that we would get a song for Dukan's son, even though, like, literally a few years ago we rejected Dukan's son's divinity, but whatever. We do get, hey, 10% fire damage received is not bad. Out of curiosity, I do want to see how long this lasts, so I'll just pick this one. Oh, they might actually just be aspects. Oh, yeah, they are. They just don't, like, have slots on the UI, but they do have slots. They just don't have anything graphical. Okay, so you can have, I think, up to 3 of these aspects. So we finished off the Deadliest Game, probably a reference to that one short story. If you've never read it, it is an interesting one. In this area, apparently, we have giant monsters or something. Many deadly creatures, which I guess you just don't find around the rest of the Deepwoods. Anyway, this will give us 20% local production efficiency. Does that actually make sense? Is that the right modifier? Because I kind of think it isn't. We'll see. Okay, so we're presented with 3 options for this one. We're gonna figure out what kind of prey we're going to hunt today. And see, they made a mistake here because clearly I'm gonna go for the toughest gamble. Why wouldn't I? The Darkwood Terror, some form of ent that is carnivorous. You can't give me the option to gamble and not expect me to gamble. Come on. And we lost. Well, he's 59 years old anyway. He's not gonna last too long. That's crazy. Anyway, moving on, we have another mission we finished off. This one we completed simply by making a bunch of money, and I mean, we don't make that much money, but it's enough. Now we're raising young orcs to also hunt in these areas to toughen them up and make them into true warriors and huntsmen. The event tells the story of a young orc girl having just completed one of her hunts, and we get to choose what she says in honor of her success. Both options remove our production malice. The bottom one will make it just a 10-year modifier that will disappear, and the top one instead replaces it with more money. Of course, this is gonna be some kind of like reverse psychology. Naturally, it's too good to be true, but I'm gonna fall for it anyway because I think it would be funny. I figured it would be a good idea to actually grab some admin tech so we can build a couple of temples. I think it's been long enough. I'm gonna go back to war with these guys, especially because I didn't even notice, but this is a gold mine. I would have loved to have this the entire time. I've just been sitting here with like not that much income. I will have to fight their ally again, but this time I don't mind as much. Because I don't have to take anything, I can just white piece them ASAP. I'll come back for them in a couple of years. There you go, much lighter war than last time. It took quite a while to finish off this mission here because I had to manually culture convert the province, and then get enough admin tech to be able to build a temple and then build said temple. But we're finally done. We've reshaped the city into one of our own making. It seems more and more like the top options are probably ones that I shouldn't take, but I'm still gonna take them. Although, we already have Ashen Guidance for Texas. What happens if we get a second one? It appears we have some issues with the Fae. Most of them are kinda just being a pain, but some of them are a little more concerning. They sit back and watch us instead of doing anything. So let's deal with it. So a meeting between our leader and a mercenary took place. At the end of it all, the mercenary said that he has an idea to try to figure out what's going on with the Fae. Presumably with the Fae, because this is all about some nightmares that the chief has been having over and over. The mercenary says, I have an idea, we'll go do something about it. And of course, we have to hire these mercenaries at the end of the month to investigate the mysteries of the forest. Before the mercenary leaves, he says, do not trust Clan Silent Blade. Now that's interesting, because I've been allied to Silent Blade for the entire campaign so far. And the reason for that is because we have a mission that requires us to either invade the entirety of Silent Blade or to be friends with them. So I figured it would just be a lot easier to be friends with them. Maybe that wasn't the best idea, but we're gonna find out why. So let's hire those mercenaries. They are very expensive, but necessary, I guess. The mercenaries have decided to follow around some suspicious orcs. Orcs which apparently vanish without a trace. We found the location that these, quote, whisperers have been disappearing to. But since this is an uncharted Gladeway, they're going to need some kind of grounding object to help navigate, which is going to come in the form of a key that we're going to have to look for. Either way, let's go and investigate their capital. One of the mercenaries, who is seemingly from this area, has returned to go look for a few things, uncovering some ideas about somebody called the Blackened Prince. Probably something we'll have to put in our back pocket, but for the time being, we have found the key. The orcs did eventually figure out that the Gladeways were connections that crossed directly through the Fey realm, most of which were discovered by the elves except for one, the one that supposedly leads to here. Presumably, that's where the key leads us. And there you go, we've ended up colonizing the middle. It took a really long time actually. I was pretty concerned. Thought my game had frozen for a minute there. All we have to do to finish off this entire tree, or maybe the first half of the tree, is to send in both the mercenary company and our regular army. Presumably that means there's going to be some kind of a battle, so I'm actually just going to wait a month, get a little bit more morale back. Path is clear and the forest's dark whisperer awaits. All that is left is for Clan Sapchopper to heft the axe one more time. We remove our Ashen Guidance for taxes and military, and then the Blackened Prince happens. We enter the heart of the Deepwoods, where the Fey realm crosses the prime material plane, whatever that means. Standing there in the center is the Blackened Prince, the avatar of nature's beauty, as is described. I believe this is actually where we get the biggest divergence in the entire mission tree. This is the moment where we either submit to the Blackened Prince or defy him and strike him down. Now, the top path I don't think is new. I'm pretty sure I have actually played this one. So presumably the top option, you become Emerald Orcs, you forge a pact with the Fae to become a new kind of orc, you change your religion as well, I think. So we're just doing a whole bunch of religion parkour, it's great. Second option, I don't think actually has a mission tree either, so we get to pick between a mission tree I've played and I don't really enjoy that much, or something I just don't think continues on. If we take the top option, we get this new event where we kneel before the prince submitting to the Fae. We lose a stability, lose 10 prestige, gain a bunch of manpower for some reason, and the Emerald Orcs will rise. Here we go. So yes, I have played this country before, and yes, it does have the mission tree that I kind of don't like like that much. It has an interesting concept, it's just the gameplay is really something, unless they've updated it, but I don't think they have. So just to show it off, this is Hugund Darak, the Fey Pact country. We have a new religion, Ashen Tree Pact, and our orcs have become Emerald Orcs, which are a little bit different in that they are technically like a special kind of race within the Deepwoods. So because we coexist with the Fey, submitted ourselves to the Fey in essence, we are now able to take advantage of the cultivated goods, which is like a modifier in a lot of different places in the Deepwoods. It gives you plus 1.5 local goods produced, which is kind of insane. As for ideas, they are pretty decent, a lot of stuff for warfare, and that's mostly it really. As for the missions, the reason I don't like them very much is because they're kind of really antiquated. You can see the kind of style where you get a permanent claim on the Deepwoods, and then you invade the area, and then you get a couple of modifiers along the way for like temporary bonuses and stuff. Like you get permaclaims, and then you take the permaclaims, then it's like, congratulations, here's 15% morale for 25 years. It's a lot of those kinds of things. It does have a very interesting premise though. So the idea is, remember how I mentioned at the beginning that the Deepwoods were burned down for the most part up here. So the idea behind this is we're actually going to bring the Deepwoods back. We are going to spread the world tree up into this area and spread the Deepwoods. It doesn't change anything on the map itself. It's all kind of just modifiers because EU4 is not easy to mod in that manner. You can't really redraw the map completely during runtime. It's just not really possible. That's the path for the Emerald Orcs. I'm gonna go take a look at the other path. If we decide instead to cut down the Archfey, we get a different event. And this just gives us a stability and prestige. Okay, never mind. That's not the only thing it does, clearly. We have a different formable, Karakanbar. We also have new traditions and ambitions to take a look at. They're pretty decent. In fact, I think I like these better than the other orcs, the Emerald Orcs. Production efficiency, infantry combat ability, 15% land fire damage is enormous. Dev cost reduction, goods produced, national manpower, movement speed, it's all pretty decent stuff. As for missions though, there's nothing here. So I'm gonna go ahead and say there's not gonna be a part 2 to this. I have already played the Emerald Orcs. I really don't want to play the Emerald Orcs again, unless maybe sometime in the future they get updated. So that's that, I guess. I really thought there was gonna be more after this. Nonetheless, interesting enough treats. Maybe not one of my favorites thus far, but it has potential. So I actually don't mind leaving it like this. I know some people are gonna be like, you didn't even take the entire Deepwoods, literally unsub, dislike. And yeah, that's fair. I mean, it is what it is. Still, it was pretty interesting. I was going into this mission tree blind for the most part, so maybe there would have been more interesting orcs to play as somewhere else, but it is what it is. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I'm not entirely sure how long it is, considering, I mean, we only got to 1490. It's not exactly that far into the game, so I don't know how long this is going to be. Probably a shorter one. But if you did enjoy today's video, I'd really appreciate it if you wanted to leave a like. Even though there's not going to be a like goal, there will not be a part 2. That's my promise for today. And aside from that, thank you very much for watching. This is Goblet signing off, and as always, have a fantastic day. Big shout out to all the Patreon members for this month. In particular, a special thank you to Erica, Baby Cow, Born to Dunk, Le Quebecer, Nick Steffel, Q-Brute, AG Forero, Ben Mottram, Quiet Guy, Rosset, Torvalve, Ambient Cyan, James Levy, Luke78776, White Rock, and Robert. All these people receive early access to videos, so if that's something you want, it only takes $1 a month.